Have you ever wondered why certain buildings tend to grab our attention and others do not? Well, my name's Brandon Rowe, and my colleague Xavier Parareda and I are going to present a paper to you on exploring the beauty of tradition, and specifically how fractal geometry influences visual attention in architectural design. Now, fractal geometry itself could be defined as a pattern that repeats itself on different scales. It has been recognized for its deep connections to patterns found in nature. Now, throughout the ages, fractal patterns have been used to create visually complex and engaging architectural designs that resonate with human perception. Not surprisingly, these fractal patterns have been a fundamental aspect of traditional architecture, as seen in intricate designs of Hindu temples, Gothic cathedrals, and Palladian villas. Now, the fractal nature of the classical orders and the moldings themselves have been explored at some length to show how these patterns contribute to the overall harmony and beauty of classical architecture. This parallels what Alberti proposed when he suggested that beauty is harmony between all of the parts. Now, while the aesthetic and psychological impacts of fractal geometry have been acknowledged, there remains a gap in our understanding of this precise relationship between fractal qualities in buildings and the visual attention they command. Previous studies have suggested that higher fractal dimensions may enhance visual engagement and reduce physiological stress. But empirical evidence in the context of, say, architectural facades is rather limited. Now, visual attention itself is a critical aspect of architectural design. It influences how people perceive and interact with their built environment. Research has shown that some environments with higher levels of visual complexity are more likely to capture and sustain our attention. Studies using eye tracking technology have also provided insights into how architectural elements, materials, and shapes can direct and focus attention during our aesthetic experience. Now, the use of eye tracking emulation tools has also further advanced our understanding of these dynamics in architecture. So our study is threefold. First is to assess the fractal qualities and dimensions of AI-generated building facades. Second is to evaluate the correlation between fractal complexity and visual attention. And third is to test the hypothesis that architecture with higher fractal qualities actually garners more visual attention.
In this next section, we will discuss the methodology. To explore the relationship between fractal qualities and visual attention, a series of building facades were generated using the generative artificial intelligence program Midjourney. A series of 4 building facades from a prior study with 4 levels of complexity were used to guide the AI prompts, resulting in 4 distinct building categories. The first category, labeled Modern, was generated using the first of the original 4 buildings as a reference. The AI output was guided by variations of the prompt, a simple black and white schematic of a modern building. The result are minimalistic, rectilinear facade designs. The second category, Stripped Classical, features facades inspired by the classical orders, but with moldings and details removed. The prompts used were variations of a simple black and white schematic of a beautiful building. The third category, Classical, includes facades that feature elements from the classical orders and display more detail than the Stripped Classical category. The AI generation was guided by variations of the prompt, a simple black and white schematic of a beautiful classical building. The fourth and final category includes facades similar to the previous 2 groups, but with a much higher level of detail and intricacy. They were generated using variations of the prompt, a detailed black and white schematic of a beautiful building. Not all outputs were suitable for analysis. Some had issues like widespread dark areas, which would skew fractal dimension results. Using perspective views instead of front elevations was avoided to ensure fairness. The AI occasionally introduced extraneous elements such as trees or lines that didn't belong to the facade, so they were excluded. Buildings with highly distinctive features, like the ones you see on the bottom right, were excluded to prevent introducing bias. To accurately estimate the fractal dimension, the images were processed by converting them from color or grayscale to pure black and white. Large dark areas were removed and thick lines were thinned to avoid skewing the results. The new images are less realistic than their grayscale versions, but much better suited for computer analysis. The final step was to organize the generated images into 7 groups, each containing one image from each complexity level. To avoid bias, the buildings were consistently arranged from least to most complex. We aim to maintain uniformity within each group in terms of building type, such as the number of floors and height to width ratio. For example, Group 2 featured 2-story buildings with 3 openings per floor, while Group 3 consisted of larger apartment buildings with 4 floors. This approach allowed for the creation of a diverse set of facades for systematic analysis of both fractal dimensions and visual attention scores.
Now, fractal dimensions in architecture are often measured using what we call the box counting method, which calculates complexity by counting how many boxes cover a pattern. This method usually gives a numerical value, represented by D, that represents the pattern's complexity. We applied this method using ImageJ software's 9 default box sizes to calculate the fractal dimension of each building facade. Now, visual attention, on the other hand, was predicted using an eye-tracking emulation tool, specifically 3M's visual attention software, to determine which building facade grabs the most pre-attentive vision before age, gender, culture, and education come into play. This software simulates human visual behavior by analyzing how different elements of a facade attract and hold attention on an unconscious level. As established in a previous study, the mean percentage score of all 4 3M VOS reports were tabulated to create a visual attention coherence score. So on to the results. In building group 1, the detailed classical facade outperforms all others in visual attention and fractal complexity. It achieves a high coherence score of 72% and the highest fractal dimension of the group at 1.8, indicating very strong visual engagement. In contrast, the modern facade performs the worst with minimal heat map coverage at 13% and the lowest coherence score, which is likely linked to its lower fractal dimension. The stripped classical and classical facades show moderate results, reinforcing the connection between higher fractal complexity and increased visual attention. Now, building group number 2 confirms this same pattern. The detailed classical facade again led with a high coherence score and a high fractal dimension. In contrast, the modern facade performed poorly with both a low coherence score and fractal dimension. Such minimal engagement from a building with the lowest fractal dimension continues the trend from group number 1. Now, in group 3, the detailed classical and classical facades maintained high visual attention coherence scores. The modern and stripped classical facades, on the other hand, had the lowest coherence scores. This finding again demonstrates that simpler designs are drawing less attention. Now, group 4 shows a similar result, with the detailed classical facade leading in visual engagement with a 71% coherence score and a high level of fractal complexity at 1.8. The modern and stripped classical facades continue to underperform and visual engagement, which is likely due to their low to mid-range fractal dimensions. Group 5, the detailed classical facade achieved full heat map coverage and nearly 75% coherence score, indicating very strong viewer attention. The modern and stripped classical facades showed very low visual attention, under 10%, confirming that these simpler designs are attracting less visual focus. In group 6, both the classical and detailed facades performed best, achieving nearly full heat map coverage, moderate coherence scores, and moderate to high fractal dimensions. The modern facade, however, again had the lowest coherence score, as well as a low fractal dimension. This further reinforces this link between complex geometry and visual attention. And last but not least, in group number 7, the detailed classical facade once again led with the highest coherence score and fractal dimension. The modern and stripped classical facades both showed very low visual engagement levels, despite their differing low to mid-level fractal dimensions. Now, this final group once again highlights the importance of intricate architectural design for capturing our human attention.
The analysis revealed a wide range of fractal dimension scores among the AI-generated facades, which reflects the diversity in their complexity. Facades with more intricate patterns exhibited higher fractal dimensions. This is consistent with the principles of fractal geometry, and the results confirm that traditional architectural forms, characterized by their self-similarity across scales, tend to have higher fractal dimensions. The analysis further indicated that a relatively high degree of similarity exists within categories, which is visually apparent in a plot like this one. Fractal dimensions ranged from approximately 1.3 to 1.8, increasing with each complexity level. The lack of overlap between categories confirms that these represent 4 distinct levels of complexity. The visual attention coherence scores obtained from the eye-tracking emulation software range from 8 to 72%, with more attention landing on buildings with the highest levels of complexity. When plotting the facades by group, categories 4 and 3 consistently exhibit the highest and second highest scores. In contrast, categories 1 and 2 generally show the lowest and second lowest scores. When summarizing the results, there appears to be a strong preference for facades with higher fractal dimensions. These facades captured and sustained attention more effectively than their simpler counterparts, which supports the hypothesis that complexity enhances visual engagement. The results align with previous research, indicating that visually complex environments are more engaging, aesthetically pleasing, and have a higher human visual preference. The statistical analysis revealed an extremely strong positive correlation between fractal dimensions and visual attention coherence scores that is statistically significant. Linear regression analysis further demonstrated that as fractal dimensions increase, there is a significant increase in visual attention coherence scores. The strong model fit and statistical significance suggest that a fractal dimension is a very strong determinant of visual attention. The anomalous results in some category 2 facades, which you can see in the scatter plot, are likely due to them receiving minimal attention within a group, leading to a small sample size for visual attention coherence scores. This may misrepresent their ability to attract attention compared to other group members. This effect is seen in groups 3, 4, 5, and 7, where most attention is directed towards buildings with complexity levels 3 and 4. As a result, the scores for levels 1 or 2 often align closely, and in some cases, level 1 buildings score higher than level 2. As a conclusion, this study demonstrates that architectural facades with higher fractal qualities elicit greater visual attention, and it highlights the importance of complexity in design. The findings suggest that fractal patterns, common in traditional architecture, stimulate visual engagement by echoing natural geometries that resonate with the human brain. This reinforces the idea that certain architectural design principles, such as proportionality, fractal scaling, ornament, and intricate detailing, are not merely aesthetic choices, but are grounded in perceptual and cognitive processes. As contemporary architecture continues to explore minimalism and abstraction, this study highlights the enduring relevance of traditional architectural elements in fostering deeper visual and emotional connections with built environments. Further research could explore how these findings might inform modern design practices to ensure that future developments maintain a balance between innovation and the timeless appeal of traditional architectural aesthetics. Architects and urban planners must strive for buildings that are both visually engaging and beneficial to human psychophysiological health. Thank you.